welcome to OneUp Health's bi-weekly webinar series. Today's the kickoff where we'll be talking about CMS patient rule. I have special guests, Ricky, Sahu, and Joe Gagnon, who are the CEO and COO of OneUp Health. And I mean, they're real product masters in the space, subject matter experts in the space. So great to be able to speak with them. Ricky and Joe, how are things going today?
Yeah, things are going well. Nice day in Boston, coming from kind of a wild storm yesterday, and I think Joe in New York saw a lot worse. But
yeah, we have lots of power lines down and trees all over the roads, and I think we're going to be days before we're back to any sort of normalcy. But you know, we always have backups and find a Wi-Fi spot, and here we go.
Well, I wish you guys the best out here in California. I mean, it's really tough, 65, sunny, and palm trees. So wishing you guys the best as I'm sitting on the beach after we get off this call. So for the interest in time, we're gonna jump right into it because I have a lot of hard-hitting questions for you two, and I think some of our viewers really want to dig into some of the information. Now, just to remind our attendees, we will be taking questions throughout the conversation. Hopefully, we'll be able to wrap them up at the end, and if not, we'll be able to answer them in a different session. But there's a chat function on the side of the YouTube video you're looking at where you'll be able to drop those questions, and hopefully we can answer them on the fly. So without any further ado, let's hop into this. So the first question for today, I'm going to pitch this one to you, Ricky. Can you give us a 1 to 2 minute explanation of CMS and the ONC mandates and sort of how OneUp Health's addressing them?
Yeah, sure. So what's really interesting about these mandates are that CMS and ONC released them, on the same date, and they're addressing two different sides of the healthcare ecosystem. One, CMS is addressing the payers, and the ONC is addressing the providers largely and data interoperability across systems. And what's required from the ONC side is the ability to mostly get alerts and notifications for members or patients that are going through the healthcare system, but also enforcement on meaningful use 3 regulations, which require apps to be able to get access to healthcare data from providers. So there are some rules around certification and attestation and testing there for the thousands of EHR endpoints that are already live with FHIR. But the CMS side is bringing that whole world into the payers environment. So now payers need to adhere to the same type of patient access or member access regulations as providers did, but for claims and clinical data that they maintain. So that's and this is all on the FHIR standard. So that's now bringing together these two worlds that are very, very much separated in the way that they were implemented at a standards level, and bringing them both to use these FHIR APIs, which will provide a whole host of new ways to interact with this data and new challenges for interoperability as well.
That sounds great. I mean, any healthcare is hard enough. When we start to take steps like this, it sounds really exciting. So reading up on OneUp Health and sort of news around it, I've heard OneUp has gotten some recognition in the past. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So recently we've been really active, and I think the biggest news to point out is that Gartner a couple months back had us in their cool vendor report where they said OneUp Health's FHIR API platform is the first true implementation of ONC's intent for healthcare interoperability. And that is something that we're very proud of. We've been working hard to make sure that healthcare data is interoperable. It is information that developers, patients, health systems, payers can all interact with using a common lingua franca of FHIR. And we were really happy to see Gartner recognize that. And then a couple other, points to note are, I guess, we recently helped Karen Alliance launch their healthcare app gallery, which we built, and we also launched our own healthcare app gallery. So that will provide places for individual patients to see what applications are available broadly in the industry, but also those that are built against OneUp and already connected to thousands of sites. And then NPR had a story about how organizations are reacting to COVID, and they mentioned how Mass Mutual, one of our customers, is using OneUp Health to help make sure that individuals can still get their get life insurance, even though we can't be close to one another. So, yeah, definitely interesting stuff happening.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Sounds like a lot of cool. Sounds like we're doing a lot of cool things in a lot of different spaces. So on to the next question. This one's for you, Joe. From Ricky's description, it sounds like the requirements are pretty straightforward. How should CIOs and executive leaders be thinking about CMS in terms of interoperability?
Yeah, so Pat, it's a good question. At some basic level, what we're sort of all happy with is that the CMS mandate is going to sort of make us first take care of just good hygiene. We all, would sit around the cafeteria and talk about data and unlocking data and trying to make sense of an industry that, in some sense has not operated at a standards level, although we've introduced some. This is really the beginning of, I would sort of call it the next wave of innovation in the healthcare industry. And it starts at the data layer, and you have to have interoperability to enable everyone from the payer, the provider, an app developer, and the patient all to be able to look at data and leverage it themselves. But first, you got to start with a platform that's going to enable that to happen. And that's what we've been spending, the past couple of years on. That there is certainly, a lot of custom work that can go on, but we're going to then end up putting ourselves in a corner where what we're looking for is to build out, sort of, I guess we almost call it a catalyst for igniting change in healthcare. This is a platform that gives analytics capability, access to the specific data that we want, and really, it might be 5 or 10 years from now before we transform healthcare, but without the right data, we don't actually know how to deliver the right service, have it be paid for the right amount, change the treatment that a patient could get, and then have everyone feel confident, ultimately, that it's done with integrity. As we start to, roll this out using the FHIR standard more and more, I think we're going to see a lot of creativity come into the market. We have started with that first level. It was the app developers who were innovative, and now you're going to see payers, get a wave of innovation going. So I'd say to the CIO, put in a platform that runs in the cloud, one that's easy to implement, that gives you access to all the data, get it to work, and then think about how into your future planning, you turn it into a platform for enabling transformation.
Sure. And I think a lot of what Ricky and you have said is that interoperability is huge, and this is a platform to sort of enable all of that, both in the short term and the long term. Now, Joe, to keep with you, when discussing these types of things with CIOs, are there typically 3 or 4 things that they're typically looking at, or what's sort of top of mind for those folks?
Well, I think the first place to start is that, we've all seen in industry, broadly the tech industry, a move to cloud. And I think that this move to Fire is probably one of the best applications, even though it's more at the data layer, to leverage cloud. So first and foremost, if you haven't gone on the path of thinking about cloud and you're mostly premise, this is your start in the cloud. We run in the cloud, and that can be, whether it's hosted, we're using the cloud, you're using the cloud, but I would say this is the first time to do that. The second thing to think about is, when you put this platform in place, it's this opportunity to clean up your data. And really, it's probably the part of this data transformation that we're all sort of wondering about, like, what do we do about that? And I think data transformation is going to be critical. But once we get it done, then we're sort of going to be in a very good place. We've spent a lot of time and money on making sure that data ingestion can happen easily. It doesn't matter where the source is. We take all formats from EDI and proprietary data to CSV, HL7, FHIR, CCDA, all the different formats that you would want. And then I think the third part of this is, when you start to build out this skill set, look for a partner who does all the right things with the platform. Of course, the simple, table stake stuff of HIPAA compliance and SOC 2 audited. But even more than that, it's the how we implement security, from OAuth perspective, and then setting up an infrastructure that makes it easy for a developer to continue to add functionality and capability to the platform. So I do think that there is a great set of activities that can go on that start to show how you can actually start to do this differently in implementing solutions that, this word interoperability sounds a bit scary, but really it's about enabling data to transform how healthcare is delivered.
That's some great insight. Thanks, Joe. So Ricky, piggybacking off of Joe's comment, I mean, this all sounds great: interoperability, empowering patients through data, things like that. How do you go about doing that? And then also, how would you respond to a CIO's comments about achieving the three things Joe mentioned? And then one last sort of tag on to this question is, what sort of advice would you give to a customer to get prepared for CMS compliance?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely going to be a lot of work for sure for every organization, because this is really the first time all of this data at the organization is coming under one roof. It's not just a effort of getting data into a standard, but it's actually creating a data warehouse that plugs in, dozens of different vendors that are feeding their own data to these health plans. So I think, like as Joe said, I really do believe that this is setting the foundation for a lot of interesting work to come for the next decade. It's really akin to what happened with EHRs and the original kind of meaningful use mandates, which required organizations to bring all their data into an electronic format. Now, data for health plans are in some electronic formats, but it's all bringing it all together in one place so that they can power all kinds of applications on top of it. And one of the points that I think a customer or CIO should really pay attention to here is, you don't want a solution that can just check the box. Because if you're just checking the box, that will help you avoid, penalties and fines, but it really is going to be a lot of work to not get so much value back in return. You want to look for a solution that is going to make you more competitive, going to make you more intelligent, and going to make it possible for you to work in an environment that is easy to interact with external parties and vendors that you work with today. A lot of the health plans that we're talking to have to deal with literally hundreds or thousands of different organizations or files that they have to send data to. And all of those files are in all kinds of proprietary formats. The intent of this rule is not just to help members get their data. The ultimate intent from CMS and ONC are to reduce costs and improve quality of healthcare in the United States. And a lot of that cost is a huge administrative burden on everyone that is participating in the space, because they are required to send data, to CMS and ONC, but also to others to make sure that the facilities that are provided to patients or to the other organizations are, couched in educated decision making, and that requires data to be transmitted. So what we're going to see happen is, yes, patients are going to be able to get their claims and clinical data, but then these pipes are going to be used to transmit data to other vendors. And then these pipes are going to be used to build population health apps on top of them to really make the organizations much more innovative. So for anyone choosing a solution now, you really want to think, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road and ask yourself whether this solution is going to be able to scale with those additional demands and needs. And that's not just scale by use cases, but that's also technological scale, as in like scalability of infrastructure, because there will be thousands of requests being made against this infrastructure every second in the very near future. And you don't want to have to re-platform after you've come to that kind of realization in another year.
It makes perfect sense. I think once you put a enterprise implementation like this and then find out you have to restructure that's going to be pretty difficult. I'd have to believe. So, Ricky, we've talked about OneUp Health and what we do, and there seems to be a lot of excitement in this space. Now, with any space, there's some large enterprise companies saying they can get plans to compliance. What, in your opinion, is the biggest difference between those companies and OneUp Health?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest difference is that this is what we've been, all we do and what we've been doing for years. We were there when the Argonaut project just kicked off before any regulation was written into law. And myself and others on our team directly helped with that. We're literally setting the standards. Some people say they set the standards, but we're literally setting the HL7 standards by balloting stuff through HL7 and other organizations and working with the rest of the community. And I think a lot of the other folks that are coming into this are coming into it pretty fresh. They are, playing a lot of catch up. And I think they're playing catch up to check the box on the rule. But you don't, like I said previously, checking the box on the rule is probably not enough for really deploying a practical solution here. Again, there are a lot of performance issues. There are a lot of internal use cases that you would want to support that checking the box on the rule doesn't support. And there's a lot of, production capability that we have, seen our platform being used for, that I think other folks will just get a taste for when they launch their first, plan. And then there are other downstream, network effects. Like one is we're connected to literally thousands of FHIR endpoints from the provider side. So health plans want to be able to use this data for more, they want to get data from outside their walls into their organizations as well, so they can support ACO type relationships or other 360-degree views of their member history, which we can help them connect to from the clinical perspective via these FHIR APIs. And then ultimately, we already have hundreds of application developers that are building against our APIs. So when some other organization launches, they'll kind of launch into this vacuum, versus we already have hundreds of apps building against these APIs that their members would be able to use directly. And the last thing is we have a bunch of public recognition for what we've done in the space from the US federal government, from awards that we won from ONC, CMS, HHS. One thing that we've won probably 10 or more awards specifically around FHIR, healthcare data aggregation, APIs, and connectivity. But the one that I'm most proud of is our secure FHIR server challenge, where we demonstrated our understanding of FHIR server security by hacking another FHIR server to find an open source FHIR server to find any patient's data for any period of time for any app that the patient had shared it with. And those are really serious things that you don't want happening to your own health plan data. So we make sure to take those security considerations into our deployments and into our product. I think that challenge was an attestation of how we do that, in addition to all the other stuff that we do with security.
That sounds great. I mean, having awards and recognition never hurts. Never hurts when you're on a smaller team like OneUp. But it really sounds from that conversation that health plans are falling into two sort of buckets. It's either you're building for a rule or you're building for the future. And it's awesome to hear that OneUp Health sort of helps you do both, depending on what those goals are. So back to Joe. As a follow-up to sort of the last question there, with all of the larger players and sort of the big names in the space, there may be some conversation around, well, OneUp Health is too small to tackle an implementation like this, and those types of conversations. What would be your response to something like that?
Well, first thing, it's a good question, Pat. I think I might start by saying that when you look at a new initiative like what we're standing in front of right now, it really helps to work with the best of breed in the industry space. This is what we specialize in. Ricky, as he said, was there sort of really from day one. There is no organization that has better background, history, experience, both in development and now live than us. The second part about that is that, once you're best of breed, and Gartner represented that with the Cool Vendor Award, it's then being part of the ecosystem. And so we're building some really good go-to-market partnerships and implementation partnerships with systems integrators, with other technology companies, so that we can fit into their system as much as we can into the client system. And then we're going to be sort of at the center of a full-blown ecosystem over time. Think of us sort of as, the heart and the circulatory system of the health system into the future here, the new operating system of the future. Every app needs data. Without data, there are no apps. And we're going to make it easier for that. So we become an ecosystem by not only, doing this at the most scalable, performant way, but also making it easy to get to the data. And so, even if you jumped on our website as an app developer, you can see how easy it is to get connected to the data. So, from the largest company to the smallest company, you have this best of breed provider who has sort of made its goal of being the enabling infrastructure. Google did it with search. There are other companies who have done this, and we're going to do it with healthcare data. And what you can see out of OneUp Health into the future is that will be a layer upon which apps get built. Now, of course, we're building our own apps, putting it in an app store so that you can not only see how it works, you can use them. And then, our team is ready and enabled to facilitate that implementation for all partners who play in our ecosystem. So, I think cloud provides an opportunity to, create this environment for collaboration, interoperability, and partnering that makes overall, transformation possible.
That sounds great. And one final question in the gauntlet here, Joe, for you, when we're talking about scaling implementation, what sorts of work goes into that? What sorts of requirements are we looking at in this space?
Yeah, I think Ricky touched on it. None of us want to underestimate that this is a lot of work. That getting all the data sources mapped, doing the data transformation, making sure it's accurate, testing it, validating it, getting it up and live and running and saying, okay, good, we're ready to go. That's a really big part of it. We've taken, if we can partner with a customer where they really work with us on that data transformation and then let us worry about the technology and the representation and the interoperability, then we have a really good, solid team. We've built implementation plans because we've been through this. We know what the steps are. We actually have a bunch of frameworks that make it easier to do that transformation and to do the mapping. And so, we believe you can get the projects done, probably more in 6, 8, 12-week time frame versus 6 months because of our experience and having been through this. And so, I think that this is one of these where we're all going to have to sort of jump in the deep end of the pool. We don't have a choice, which is sort of good because probably a whole bunch of us would have preferred, to stay away. But the great part about it is when you put this effort in and you get this data mapped and you start to make it available to all the endpoints that you want to, you're going to be surprised that you've just built probably one of the best pieces of infrastructure you're ever going to build in your healthcare environment. And we're ready to do that with everyone and anyone.
That sounds great to me. Now, I do appreciate both your times. We've gone through 27 minutes of the hard-hitting questions. You guys have really hung in there. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the people on the line appreciate it as well. Now, I'm looking at the live chat, and it doesn't seem like there's any questions there. So we'll give the anybody who's shy just a couple more minutes. But I do want to thank you both for your time. And now, as we give the people some time, I will plug our next webinar is set to go off August 19th, same time, and we will be going through a demo of our solution. So if you're interested in that, we'll be sending out some information over social in the next few days. So happy to see you all again. Invite your friends, invite your family. We're a pretty nice group here. So one last check of that question, and it looks like we have nothing here. So that's just about all the time we have for this week. Joe and Ricky, any last thoughts before we let the people go?
Ricky, I'll leave it to you.
I think this is good. I mean, there's a lot of interesting movement in the space to come, and we're excited to, be in it, in the thick of it.
Awesome.
I look forward to working with all of you, and if you have anything, please reach out.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, with that, I think it's a wrap on the first bi-weekly webinar. Well, like I said, we'll see you all very soon. Thanks again for your time.
All right. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Jess.